Hello again, Rune Weavers. Hello again, Rune Weavers, and welcome to the Runic Cosmology Series, which we're doing this whole month of January. In this video, the part two of the gods and goddesses of Asgard, we're going to look at the goddesses of Asgard, including Frigg, her 12 handmaidens, Idun, and Sif. So let us begin. Frigg, All-Mother, Seer, Spinner, Goddess of the home, bringer of tranquility to the inner places of the mind and soul. Frigg is a very special goddess to me. She is one of my patron goddesses. We've worked together for a very long time, which might be a little surprising to people who are used to thinking of Satyr and Volvas and Freya. Well, no one was more surprised than me, I think, when I felt the strong connection that I feel to Frigg and began working with her and just have, that feeling when you get it, when you work with a god or goddess and you just know. You know what I mean? And this is actually one of my statues of her. It's my favorite statue of her that I have. It's unfortunately kind of tiny, but it shows Frigg with magic, uh, her magic staff and a goose. As you'll hear in the Germanic heathen video coming up, I work a lot with the Germanic Earth Mother, whose symbol is the goose. Some of you might also see that connection in my videos on Grandmother Winter that I've done on this channel as well. So, seeing a seeing a statue of Frigg with her spindle and her goose, well, I just had to have it. Um, she is the All Mother, the mother of Asgard. She's served by handmaidens. There's different numbers. We're going with 12 for this video. 12 of them. She's Odin's wife, but the two of them famously don't always get along. And I think a lot of that is because they represent two very different energies and two very different ways of doing things. Where Odin is your wily, wandering extrovert who's always finding ways of getting into trouble, Frigg is a goddess very much attuned to balance, to nature, and to the way of how things are, and I mean are with like a capital A. Um, but she loves him. She cries for him when he gets killed by the wolf. Um, she loves her children. She especially loves Balder. She used her magical powers to the best of her abilities, first to save him and then to bring him back from the underworld. And I think for a lot of us who have gone through some form of grief or grieving, we know we would do anything to bring that person back if only we could, right? So, among her other powers, she's a very powerful magical wielder. Her power in particular comes from her knowledge and her control over the stuff of fate. And I'm saying stuff here in the sense of yarn. You basically you take like a bunch of wool or flax and you use a spindle to straighten it out and turn it into yarn. And then you can use that yarn when you're weaving and crafting. And the Norns weave fate, but they get their yarn from Frigg. So that's her. The goddess Frigg, mother, spinner, seer, goddess of the home. Next, let's talk about Frigg's handmaidens. You'll hear different numbers of them depending on which source you're looking at. Pretty commonly is 12. I've also seen 13, sometimes just one or two. Unfortunately for these goddesses, the handmaidens of Frigg, while the gods of Asgard get a lot of time and stories and legends recorded about them, in particular, popular gods who show up in the sagas like Odin and Thor and Loki get lots and lots of attention. Even gods like Uller get very little. The handmaidens, all 12 of them, despite being even admitted by Snorri himself equal to the gods, only get 2 pages total in all of Snorri's works. So, much of the lore as we have it about these handmaidens comes not just from Snorri, which is, like I said, just a few lines, usually for each. It also comes from extrapolating through personal gnosis, shared gnosis, and cross referencing with any other sources that can be found. First one that we'll look at is Fulla or Vola. Her name means abundance. She is described as having long blonde hair, which is bound with a golden band, and she has the sacred task of looking after Frigg's treasure box, which is full of jewels and Frigg's shoes. The significance of these tasks has been lost to us, but many heathens link her name, Abundance, with those treasures, and see her as a goddess of wealth and prosperity, while others look upon the box of treasure as being symbolic of women's mysteries. And Fulla, then, is a goddess of sacred initiation rites, which are symbolized by Frigg's jewels and her shoes. I could see it very easily here, the idea of the shoes walking in the path of Frigg, perhaps. Maybe you would say a prayer to Fulla or Vola before getting into an initiation rite, but again, the precise details have been lost. There is one other reference in the surviving lore to Fulla. It is from the Merseburg charm, where Woden and Frigg heal Baldur's horse, where she is identified as Frigg's sister. Specifically, Frigg is referred to as sister of Vola, which is the Germanic form of Fulla's name. Gna is Frigg's messenger. She is an animal-speaking, horse-riding, fast-talking, fast-traveling goddess. Her horse, Hofvarpnir, which means hoof flourisher, is her closest confidant. She can speak with animals and often rides through dreams on a mouse. And the little mouse is a way of getting into small spaces, while Hofvarpnir, the horse, is fast and can travel on the air as easily as on the ground. She loves speed, she loves travel, she loves going places, which makes her such an effective and powerful messenger for Frigg as she oversees the world as its all mother. Gna or Gna is her name means to soar or tower over, and also phonetically comes out a lot like the neighing of a horse. So Gna or Gnau. Hard to pronounce, but that's the way I've heard it used. And we have the goddess Lothin. Lothin is the patron goddess of forbidden and star-crossed lovers. Any love that society or families frown upon or discourage is under her protection. For this reason, many LGBTQA heathens have found comfort in her embrace of love that doesn't meet society's standards, especially as it's been imposed upon us by the Christian heterodoxy of one man and one subordinate wife. That's not Lothin's territory. When you love someone, but the world is trying to keep you away from them, you can pray to her. I often think if Romeo and Juliet had been Lothin worshippers rather than, Christians in Italy, they probably would have had a much happier ending because Lothin would have made sure that they did not both die miserably. Her name means permission, and she gives people permission to love as they love, symbolized by her sacred key, which in that picture you can see wrapped around her waist. Key holding was a very important job for women in the Viking Age. The key was a symbol of the home. If you held on to the key, you had the power over that dwelling. And in a way, we still have an echo of that when we talk about someone being honored by giving them the key to the city. That's a residue of that same standard. Then we have Sin, the doorkeeper, goddess of setting healthy boundaries and knowing when to say yes and when to say no. Sin can be prayed to when you need to keep a space safe from dangerous people. Some people dedicate the brooms hanging in their doorways to her. And on a very personal note here, when I was working on getting this presentation, this PowerPoint set up, I live in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and it's right now at the beginning of January in 2026. Just a few days ago, there was a woman, Renee Good, who was murdered point blank 3 times by a cop, ICE agent, really not even a real cop, ICE agent. Has been on the news a lot lately. And I started breaking down and crying in the middle of making this presentation because it's like my home and my city is not a safe place to be right now. There's too many stories, too much worry and fear, and people are fighting back. People are trying to make a safe haven again in this city, but it's not easy when there's people actively trying to get at us and prevent us from living our best lives. And so obviously this has been on my mind all week. And so when I was reading about her and working with her, I could feel her presence. I could feel her presence as we were trying to make this city, Minneapolis, safe again. And she shared with me a short spell that we can use. So if you're watching this and you feel your city is in danger from really anyone who is supposed to be taking an oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States, and it's clear that they're not doing that job of protecting this country and protecting the people of this country, you can use this poem to call upon her to keep you and the people you love and the people around you, your neighbors, keep them safe. Sin, watch over us. Keep us safe from those who will not guard us. Keep us safe from the oath breakers who will harm us, until The spring thaw returns. Sin, watch over us. Keep us safe from those who will not guard us. Keep us safe from the oath breakers who will harm us until the spring thaw. And so that's sin. I hope by all the gods that a day will come we won't need that kind of spell again. But if we do, if we need to make our city and our homes safe places again, just know she, Frigg's doorkeeper, door guardian, she has our backs. And on the same note, we'll be talking in a couple of slides about another handmaiden who's also going to help us here. But first, let's talk about Var. Var is the goddess of oaths and promises. She has influence over the oaths, how they are spoken, and her name, Var, is cognate both with our modern English words vow and, curiously enough, warranty. She can be invoked to help a person keep a promise or an oath which is difficult for them. If you have a contract and you wish it to be sanctified in her name, you can place it on her altar and she will keep it hallowed for you. And it was strongly believed that, if you have an oath or a contract and it's given to a god or a goddess, it's especially unbreakable. And so she is, I kind of mentioned this a little bit with Tyr, and it also comes up a lot with Ulir as well. The idea that, your sacred oath is something that needs to be kept. And what I also find about Var specifically is she has a lot of control over the wording of oaths and promises and contracts. And I find that interesting because we all know when you're pledging something, what you say is extremely important. So call upon her if you want to keep the contract binding, to be bound by it, no matter what. Then we have Snotra, the goddess of courtesy. And she can be called upon to bring harmony and peace to a large gathering of people. The rules of etiquette and the gathering of people in fellowship is sacred to her. If you're not sure what to do in a strange setting and you don't want to make a social faux pas, like you don't know which fork to choose or what to do if they pass around the really unusual bowl of soup, you might want to give a prayer to Snotra and ask her to guide your actions to doing the right thing. And one thing I've often thought about with her is in the beginning verses of the Havamal, where the guest and host customs are laid out. I know obviously we talk about that being the words of Odin, the High One, but I wonder how much influence she has over what a guest and what a host is supposed to do. Because we all know Odin doesn't always follow his own advice, but Snotra definitely does. And we have Gefjon. She is another handmaiden whose legend lives on in other texts, giving us a much richer picture of who she was and what she was like. In this case, she is known in the founding myth of Zealand, Denmark. In the Heimskringla saga, she is a giantess, or Jotun, who had 4 sons. She went to the king of Denmark and asked him to give her land, and he promised her as much as she could plow in a day. Gefjon, being a smart woman, turned her 4 sons into oxen, and they plowed the former peninsula of Zealand into an island, which she then claimed as her own land. This is memorialized to this day in a fountain in Copenhagen, Denmark, which is now on one of my lists of places I want to go to celebrate heathenry in Northern Europe. She is a goddess of agriculture, of hard work, ingenuity, and gift giving. Because when we talk about Gabo, which we're going to get to soon, don't worry, we're going to talk a lot about how the gift of a king to a guest or visitor was a strong way of promoting harmony and peace. And so she is tied through the gift of Zealand to Gabo. And she is also the protector and patron goddess of unmarried women and teen girls. And Saga. I bet you've all heard of a saga before, haven't you? But did you know that Saga comes from the name of one of Fregg's handmaidens? Saga has managed to latch her name onto the historical tales that match the histories she loves so much. Every time we refer to an Icelandic saga, like I just did in the Heimskringla saga, we are retracing a linguistic history back to the goddess whose hall, Sukvabek, would be a favorite hangout for any bookworm. Odin himself loved to spend time there, drinking ale and swapping stories. She especially loves tales of heroes, founding myths, great legends, and tales of great and mighty warriors. And in the modern day, she might be just as impressed with those family stories that get swapped around, retold, and transformed into family legends. All right, so Sjolfin. I apologize. I'm not always best at the pronunciation of these names. Sjolfin, goddess of affection. She is the goddess who oversees all forms of love and affection, and not just the romantic kind. Anyone you feel close to, your friends, your grandparents, your pets, the parent child bond, all of those fall under her influence. Peace and goodwill and fellowship fall in her wake. And, as in Ace Heathen, we hear a lot about the goddesses of like Freya, who deal a lot with romantic love and all that. But I really think she's a good goddess for a person who is Ace, where we don't feel the sexual attraction, but we have close ties to friends and people that we care about. And all of those are under Sylphin's way of Aegis, I mean. And then we have Hlyn. If you recall when I talked about Sin, the doorkeeper, keeping people safe. Hlyn, whose name means sanctuary or refuge, gets them to Sin's door. If you are in danger, if you are in trouble, and you call upon Frigg to protect you from harm, Hlyn will come out with her shield and stand before you, and her shield will catch the arrows of the attack and shelter you behind it. And she will guide you from that place of danger to a place of refuge or sanctuary. Hlyn is especially protective of women, children, and the innocent who come into harm's way. And so again, like I was talking about earlier, when we feel right now in Minneapolis, there's some really bad stuff going on here, some really dangerous things. I feel like Hlyn is another goddess that I really, really could feel some help from right now. She also is a goddess who helps those who are in mourning become unstuck from their grief. She provides a safe space full of love and comfort to help people who are suffering from loss of those they love, so that they can move forward and find a way to live on without the person that they are missing so much. So again, she is a goddess of sanctuary, of keeping people safe. And for that, we honor her. And then we have Vor. Vor is the seer of Frigg's court. She is the goddess of those who look with second sight upon the world, catching glimpses of things that are not yet, that have been, or are occurring far away. If you are a vulva with a staff, if you cast the runes, if you cast the bones, if you read the tarot decks, you may call upon Vor to be your guide. She is also a goddess of intuition, and you can pray to her to help you hear the inner voice of your psyche, guide you through decisions that you are uncertain of. Unfortunately, very little else is known about her, but I think it's very telling and very important because remember, Frigg is a goddess who controls fate itself. So if she is a seer working for the goddess who controls fate, just imagine how much power she must have to look upon the full tapestry of the runes and see just how far it goes. Think of how much Frigg must rely on her at times like when they're working with to stop Balder from dying, trying to find a way to alter his fate. That is Vor. And we have Ir, or Eir. Er or Air. Air is a goddess of healing, whose specialty is surgery. Her sacred plant is the comfrey, which is used in healing. I actually used comfrey extensively when I broke my collarbone, and I credit it with giving me full range of motion back in my shoulder. She is also the goddess of surgical implements. Her colors are red and green, and she carries a sacred pouch in which she keeps all the tools of her trade. She is the patron goddess of ER surgeons, EMTs, and battlefield medics. All those medical professions where decisions often have to be made in seconds and a life or death hangs in the balance. And you may also pray to her if you ever find yourself on the receiving end of such a situation. Pray that the people who are looking after you when you're in the emergency room will have the wisdom and knowledge to get you back on your feet. Now, all of the handmaidens of Frigg are unmarried and independent women. They all have jobs to do, and they're not tied to any man or god in any of the stories. And that's true, I think, a lot of times with handmaidens throughout history, too. But there are also goddesses of Asgard who are not among her handmaidens, who also have important roles to play. We're going to talk about two of them right now, Sif and Idun. Sif is Thor's wife and is most famous for her long golden hair. Thor, as the strong, valiant protector of Midgard and son of Earth, Jotun Jord, she is therefore an Earth daughter goddess by marriage. And like many of the goddesses, much of her lore and worship must be inferred from her name and from the remaining texts. And I don't think it is any coincidence that her name is cognate with ancient words for affinity or connection through marriage. She is an earth goddess through marriage, and her long golden hair, which was once stolen by Loki, led to a whole series of events detailed in the Eddas. At the end of it, Loki had to organize a complex scheme to make things right again, which yielded many valuable gifts of the god, including her husband's hammer, Mjolnir. But she also got her hair back. Hair spun of gold, which could grow from her scalp just like real hair. In the same way, crops are grown, cut down, and either eaten to give strength or sold for cash, which valuable gifts can be purchased from. She is a goddess of golden fields and rich growing things from which other growing things and riches come. And she is also a goddess of gold. Her Sif's hair was a popular kenning for gold in Old Norse poetry. And Idun is another Aesir goddess, best known for a story in which Loki was up to some shenanigans. Her husband is Bragi, the god of poetry. She is a goddess of eternal youth, which is what her name means. She collects apples from a special tree in Asgard, and she keeps them in a special wooden casket. When the gods and goddesses of Asgard eat these apples, they share in her blessing of eternal youth and strength. The importance of this was never felt more strongly when Loki arranged for Thiazi to steal Idun and his apples for himself, and all the gods and goddesses became old and wrinkly in her absence. Loki then had to turn into a giant falcon and bring her back to Asgard before they all died of old age and beat him up. And Thiazi was killed while pursuing her. Remember that. Thiazi was killed after Idun was kidnapped and returned to Asgard by the Asgardians. It will come up again in the video when I talk about Skadi. One other interesting thing to note here, the word in the Old Norse texts might not actually be apples as we understand them in the modern English sense. The word that was used for her apples, quotes, could refer to any kind of fruit or nut and has simply been translated as apples. So if you feel drawn to a different kind of fruit with her, that's okay. Personally, and again, this is just me personally, I wouldn't be surprised if pears came into it somehow. Because of a link between pear tree and women's magic in some surviving fairy tales, including versions of Cinderella, where instead of a fairy godmother, it was a pear tree which brought the gifts to her. Also, the Pethro rune refers to a pear tree in its name, but also symbolizes fate and chances not yet brought to fruition. And according to Tacitus, the earliest runes were drawn on the wood cut from a fruiting tree. Pears are a fruit. Fruiting tree, runes, pears, eternal life. Is it a coincidence? I don't know. There just isn't enough left of the old lore on Idun to be totally sure, but those are my thoughts on it. So, rune weavers. We've now met all of the, or not all, definitely not all of them, but many of the gods and goddesses of the Aesir. So stay tuned for the next videos in my Runic Cosmos series. We're going to look at the Vanir gods and goddesses. We're going to look at the Jotuns. Going to look at Loki and his/her children. By the time I'm done, you will understand why there's a slash there. Yes, Sleipnir, I'm talking about you. And talk about the Germanic gods and goddesses. And then we're going to talk about ancestor worship, bloats, and modern heathenry. So I hope you all stay tuned